Hello and welcome to this video. Thank you for joining me today. I think I'll do something a little bit different today. I want to make a video, but I didn't want to play the piano. I'm just sort of tired of making piano videos right now for YouTube. Of course, I always make piano videos for the Well-Rounded Pianist, for my faithful subscribers over there. So if you want to learn piano from me, you can go over to the Well-Rounded Pianist and sign up. I upload weekly material there, new material every week. Anyway, my last YouTube video I made was a performance of the Prelude in B minor from the Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1 of Bach, and I mentioned that I play it in 6 minutes, that I actually played it in almost exactly 6 minutes to the second almost. And that this is what Bach intended, or at least what I think Bach intended. And this is ruffled a lot of feathers, I think, and created some controversy. And what I wanted to do in this video, this is just going to be the first in a series of many videos that I plan on doing over the course of the next coming months and even the next year or so, on Bach's tempo practices. If you're watching this video and you want to see me play piano, I'm not playing any piano in this video, just maybe some notes here and there, just as demonstration. But so if you're here to hear me play piano, you'll be disappointed because I'm not playing piano for you here in this video. This is a rather lengthy video. So you might want to just sit back, get a drink or something, and enjoy it. I am explaining, or trying to explain as best to my abilities, how this whole tempo thing came up. If you go and watch my old YouTube videos, the ones from 2008, I first joined YouTube in September of 2008. It's now 2021, so it's been 13 years. In those very early YouTube videos, especially the ones on Bach, when I made Bach videos, I said, in fact, I'm reading right here because I forgot what I had written at the time. You'll see this little message pop up before my videos. It says, "This video represents many years of research by Bach scholar and pianist Corey Hall. Using an innovative scientific method, Hall has proven the tempos Bach intended for virtually all his music. Analysis shows Bach planned an ideal tempo for each movement, which Hall demonstrates here." When I first joined YouTube in 2008, my sort of goal at that time in 2008 was to promote my research and my theories regarding Bach's tempo practices. And it started that way. I had a lot of information on Bach's tempi were on my website, on BachScholar.com. And it was that way for a few years. And then when BachScholar.com sort of turned into more of a business and less of a sort of a hobby on the side, I took all that off and converted it into more of an e-commerce kind of site for piano lessons and sheet music. You know, you have to make a living somehow. So I wasn't making a living promoting my Bach tempo theory, so I really didn't do much with it in those years, or since then, really. It's been on the back burner. So here's what happened. Let me go back to the very beginning when this happened, and just to remind you, this is one of many videos I'll be doing on this topic. So I'm going to make a playlist of all my videos pertaining to this subject, so you may view them. And sometimes I'll be using my whiteboard to explain things, and I'll be demonstrating other things on the piano and so forth. So this goes way back to 1991 and 1992. I was a graduate student at the University of Kansas. And by the way, I'll just show it to you here. There have been people in cyberspace, I guess, that all my bashers and haters who claim that I don't have degrees or I'm a fake or that sort of thing. So this is my doctoral musical arts degree that I received from the University of Kansas in 1994. Okay, I was at the time I was 31 years old when I received my doctorate in music and performance. I also received a master's degree in musicology and music history, the University of Kansas. So I lived in Lawrence, Kansas for 7 years where I pursued that degree. That was in 1994, and then, you know, YouTube had not been invented yet until another many years, actually, like maybe another 12 years YouTube was invented. So this is way back pre-YouTube days. And in 1991, when I first moved to Lawrence and pursued my degree, my doctoral musical arts degree in piano performance, I also was pursuing a master's degree in music history at the same time, because the coursework was sort of the same. It led to two different degrees. So I thought, well, I'm interested in music history, and so I thought, well, I may as well get a degree in that too. So anyway, I was enrolled in a performance seminar, in a graduate seminar class with one of my favorite professors. His name was J. Bunker Clark. I really loved that professor. I think he died around 10 or so years ago of cancer, unfortunately, but I kept in touch with him long after I had graduated. Anyway, when I was in J. Bunker Clark's performance seminar, I wrote a paper. This was in, I think, 1991, either 91 or the beginning of 92. And I wrote a research paper on tempo in the Baroque period, because it was a performance seminar. So I picked a performance topic I was interested in. I was interested in tempo, how fast or slow things should be played. And I wrote a research paper on this. You know, I received good grades on it. J. Bunker Clark, Professor Clark loved it. He thought it was a great topic and thought I covered it really well. Can't remember how long it was. You know, it was just maybe a 10-page or 20-page paper on tempo in the Baroque period. And so the next thing that happened was I became very, very interested in it. I spent hours. In those days, I didn't even have a job. All I did was I was a professional student all day. So I would just practice all day on Bach or whatever I was playing. And it turns out that, and I remember this, I even remember the date this happened. This was July 2nd, 1992. I even remember it to this day. July 2nd, 1992. I even remember where I was living. I was living with my wife at the time in a small apartment place near the campus, near the University of Kansas campus. And I don't know what happened to me. I was like, something hit me. I felt like some spirit had entered me or something. It was the freakiest thing. I can't believe, I can't even explain it. It was like an epiphany of some kind. Something entered me. Some sort of spirit entered me. I don't know what it was. And at the time, I was not religious. I was an atheist. Okay, so it didn't have anything to do with God or anything of that nature. And I didn't know what it was, but what happened was an absolute miracle. I can't believe what happened. The next thing that happened was I developed a system of figuring out appropriate tempi in the music of Bach. And it sort of grew out of this paper that I wrote on tempo in the Baroque period. But it had to do mostly with the numbers of measures that Bach wrote in his compositions. Like, I have the Well-Tempered Clavier here in front of me. And it had to do with certain relationships in like numbers of measures and the mathematical sort of things like that. And this was in 1992, okay? And I knew I had discovered something monumental. I knew what I had discovered had never been discovered before, and that I discovered it. I could not sleep for about 2 or 3 days. It was like I was hit by some spirit, and the spirit sort of made it possible for me to decipher these weird practices of Bach. I know that it sounds strange. I know it does. But let me just read a little bit here from Johann Sebastian Bach, The Learned Musician by Christoph Wolff. This was published in 2000. So this had not been published yet at that time. I did not have this book at that time. But one of the main theses that Professor Wolff makes in this book is, I'm reading from page 4 here, from the first chapter, is that Christoph Wolff explains how Bach considered himself to be a musical scholar who produced works of musical science. Wolff explains very well about how Bach did not like to be called just a musician. That was kind of low on Bach's list of professions. Bach considered himself not to be just a musician or even just a composer, but he considered himself a musical scholar producing works of musical science. Now, and he goes on and explains more. If you don't have this book, you might want to get it. It's a great biography of Bach. Johann Sebastian Bach, The Learned Musician, Christoph Wolff. You should get this book. Anyway, this book was not published then. This was 8 years before this book was published. So I didn't know anything about Bach producing works of musical science, considering himself to be a musical scientist. I didn't know any of that stuff when I came up with my Bach tempo theory. But what I discovered was shocking. What I discovered was I started to go over, and I thought, well, if Bach had some sort of system of tempo, okay, I'm not saying he did, but here's the reasoning. If Bach had some sort of system of tempo that he used throughout his works, then, okay, fill in the then the most logical conclusion is that he would have planned numbers of measures for his compositions. So if this is true, then this is true. If Bach was a musical scientist producing works of musical science, and if one aspect of his musical science was time constraints, working with time, then if that's true, he had to have been conscious of and even tried to attain certain numbers of measures in his compositions. Because in order to arrive, well, not just the tempo, I'm talking not just about the tempo in beats per minute, like a beat. I'm talking about tempo in the macro sense, and like how long a composition lasts. If it lasts 2 minutes, or if it lasts 3 minutes, or if it's maybe 3.5 minutes, whatever it may be. So in these early years, actually it was July 2nd, 1992, I started to discover patterns. And it was not only in the keyboard music. I actually checked out cantatas from the library a few dozen of them actually. This is actually before the internet, or there wasn't really hardly any internet then anyway, so everything was done by the old-fashioned way. So I went to the library, checked out a bunch of his cantatas, and started counting measures. Like this aria from this cantata has whatever number of measures. You know, this has 60 measures. And the chorus after that aria has, say, 80 measures. So the relationship between 60 and 80 is, you know, there's a definite relationship there. And so, you know, that 60 can be reduced to, I can't even do it in my head. It's like a 3 to 4 relationship, I think. So 60 to 80 is 3 to 4. So I was discovering that every time I would count numbers of measures in his movements, cantata movements, preludes and fugues. I even looked at violin and harpsichord sonatas. You know, this was just the beginning, so I hadn't looked at all of his works yet. That the freakiest things were happening, and I was discovering that there was something that he was doing with his numbers of measures that was definitely planned. It was not accidental, and it was not coincidental. Okay, a musical scientist producing works of musical science, especially if they have to do with time constraints and tempo, is going to have to control his parameters. And those parameters in Bach's pieces are how long they are, so if you play it at a certain tempo, it lasts a certain amount of time. Okay, so let's take, for example, the C-sharp minor prelude and fugue. I just happen to have that in front of me here. That's the one that goes. Okay, the prelude goes like that. The fugue goes. And then when the eighth notes come in, it goes like that. Okay. So anyway, that's how the music goes. The prelude has 39 measures. 39 measures. The fugue, it's a big double fugue, it has 115 measures. Okay, so if you take 39 and you take 115, do you see any sort of relationship or sort of a close to a perfect relationship there? You see. Finding a calculator here online because the one I use is on my phone and I'm using that for this video. Online calculator. Okay, here we go. So 39 is the prelude, 115 is the fugue. So if you go 39 times 3, 39 times 3 is 117. Okay, so if Bach had composed just 2 measures fewer for the fugue, or no, 2 measures more for the fugue, then the fugue would have had exactly 3 times more measures than the prelude. It's almost an exact relationship. It's only off by 1 or 2 measures. Or let's say if he had written 38 measures, let's say if the prelude had consisted of 1 less measure, 38 instead of 39, 38 times 3 equals 114, and he achieved 115 in the fugue. So if you play around with these numbers, any way you look at it, it's if Bach planned this, which I think he did because he was a musical scientist producing works of musical science, and one aspect of science is the overall great parameters of the works, then this proves, or at least suggests, that Bach planned it this way. The prelude has 39 measures, the fugue has 115 measures. Yes, it's not exact. It's not exact. It's not an exact 1-to-3 relationship, but it's only 1 or 2 measures off. It's close. It's really close. Now, what does that have to do with performance? Well, one of the things I discovered in 1992 was that when I was discovering these things in cantatas, in preludes and fugues, everywhere, literally all of Bach's works, when you look at the numbers of measures of his movements, I actually counted. I spent the next few years counting all the measures in all of his works. I actually had a microfiche machine, one of those big machines with the looking at the slides in it, because that was pre-internet. I had a microfiche machine of all of Bach's works, and I actually went and counted all of his measures in all of his works, all the cantatas, all the organ works, all the keyboard works, and I started to see patterns that were absolutely freaky. These were just, this is why I couldn't sleep for 2 or 3 days in July when I discovered this, because I knew I discovered something that's never been discovered before. So let's go back to this prelude and fugue. What does this mean about performance? Well, it means that the prelude is in 6/4 time. It has 39 measures. So if you take the quarter note, if you take that quarter note like that, 6/4 time, whatever that may be. I'm not trying to say it has to be this speed, whatever that quarter note is. There's a total of 39 times 6 quarter notes. There's 234 quarter notes in the prelude. So if your beat is the quarter note, you're beating that 234 times. Right, now the fugue. Let me write that down here, 234. Now the fugue. Let's say, well, let's take that tempo. Let's just take that. Sort of andante speed, not too fast, not too slow. I know that a lot of people play it slower than that, but if you take that quarter note speed, and apply that to the fugue, I'm going to take it where the 8th notes come in. I know that a lot of people play it faster than that. I know that. But this is in the ancient style. It's a stile antico. The ancient style like this was supposed to emulate the Renaissance vocal music. So the fugue is not allegro. I mean, it's not necessarily adagio, but I would say the fugue is a nice andante. The prelude, also a nice andante from the style. If you take that quarter note, let's take that quarter note. I'm going to take that. And I'm going to take so that would make the beginning like this. Like that could be, actually no, let me take that back. I want to try something a tad slower. Actually, 20 years ago, I thought it was that, but I think both are a tad slower. But anyway, let me get to the point. The point is, if you choose the exact same quarter note speed for both, 6/4 at a quarter note speed, and then you choose 2/2 at the half note speed, of course, would be half of that. They have equal quarter notes. Well, what happens when you do that? Well, the fugue has 115 measures, 115, and it has 4 quarter notes per measure. Yeah, 4 per measure. So you go for 115 times 4 equals 460. So you have 460 quarter notes. So, and the prelude has a total, with the 39 measures of 6/4, it has 234 quarter notes. The fugue, with 115 measures of 2/2, has 460 quarter notes. 234, 460. You can see it's an exact, almost exact, just 4 beats off. We're talking just 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just 4 beats off from being a perfect 1-to-2 ratio. What does that mean? Well, that means the fugue lasts 2 times longer than the prelude. The fugue lasts 2 times longer than the prelude if you play the quarter note equal for both prelude and fugue. Okay, that might not seem like a big deal for one piece, but think about this. What if Bach did that kind of thing in all of his works? What if Bach did this sort of thing in pretty much all his preludes and fugues for piano or harpsichord? What if he did it in all of his preludes and fugues for organ? What if he did it in arias and choruses and cantatas? What if he did it in big works like the B minor Mass? What if he did it in all of his works? Have you thought about that? Well, I thought about that, and when in these early years, in 1992, when I came up with this sort of radical Bach tempo theory, I was discovering that it was not a coincidence. Okay, I would find things like this in a prelude and fugue, and I would think, oh, well, maybe it's a coincidence. And then I would look at another prelude and fugue, and I would find a similar kind of thing, but the relationship might be different. It might not be a 1-to-2 ratio, but a 2-to-3 ratio, or a 1-to-1 ratio. Basically, what I found, and I still stand by this today, even though many of my actual tempi have changed, the relationships have remained all of these years since 1992. There are 3 duration ratios that Bach sought for his music. There are 1-to-2 ratios, such as this prelude and fugue, where the prelude lasts a certain amount of time, and then the fugue lasts 2 times longer. That's a 1-to-2 ratio. 1-to-2, or sometimes there's 2-to-1. The prelude might last 2 times longer than the fugue. Or the aria and a chorus and a cantata might be the same thing. 1-to-2. The next most common ratio, and probably the most common of all, is 1-to-1. 1-to-1 is when a prelude and fugue last the same amount of time. And then the other one is 2 to 3. That's when one of the movements lasts 1/2 longer than the other. So if, let's say, if one movement lasts 2 minutes, the other movement lasts 3 minutes, 2 to 3. So I believe that Bach, the great musical scientist, as Christoph Wolff claims him to have been, I believe that Bach, the musical scientist, was like a musical architect, and that he planned his tempi. He knew how fast or how slow he wanted the piece, and he had a system. I'll go over that in future videos. I don't have time in this video for that, to get into the actual tempi. But if that's true, if Bach was a musical architect and a musical scientist, then he had to have known his tempi in beats per minute, even though he had no metronome. They had clocks, they had seconds, hours, minutes. Those have all been around since the ancient Mesopotamians, like around 3000 BC. So Bach knew what a second was. He knew what a minute was. He knew what an hour was. So if he was a great musical scientist, he would have been able to do these things. So he, first and foremost, he knew the tempo of whatever composition he was writing. He planned the tempo before he wrote the composition. All had to do with the style it fits into and so forth, whether it's an allegro, whether it's an andante, whether it's a certain type of dance form or whatever. So he would know his tempo. Then, after that, if he knew his tempo and he had two pieces or two movements that he would want to link together to have a certain ratio of durations, then he would be able to determine the numbers of measures to shoot for in order to make that relationship happen. So in this prelude and fugue, I don't think it's a coincidence at all that the prelude happens to have a certain number of measures, and the fugue has 3 times more measures than the prelude. And it's not a coincidence at all that both the prelude and fugue happen to work very well with equal quarter note speeds. If you play this prelude and fugue at equal quarter note speeds, whatever your tempo is, if you keep that tempo consistent, the fugue will last 2 times longer than the fugue, not 3 times longer. So the ratio of the numbers of measures is 1 to 3. But when you apply the tempo to both, the ratios of the duration of time is 1 to 2. So just one little thing before I stop, and this is going to be continued in many more videos, so you'll be able to find out more about my tempo theory. But if you look at the first prelude and fugue, so you have the prelude has a tempo, whatever that tempo is. The fugue has another tempo. Maybe they're equal, maybe they're not. I don't think so. Try to experiment with the first prelude and fugue in C major, and it doesn't work. I don't think it works well musically if you give them the same tempo. So I don't think quarter note equals quarter note for the first prelude and fugue. But here's the thing, look at the number of measures. The prelude has 35 measures. The fugue has 27 measures. 35, 27. So the prelude has just like 8 more measures than the fugue does. So what do you think that would indicate if Bach sought these kinds of duration relationships? What do you think that means? Well, the most obvious thing, and I'm not the only one who has found this to be true, but another scholar in an article has found it. He believes it also. So I'm not the only one that thinks this. That the prelude They're both in 4/4 time. The prelude has 35 measures, the fugue has 27 measures. This means that the fugue is a little slower than the prelude. Well, how much is a little? Well, I'll get to that in future videos. I don't have time now, I have to go. I have a commitment I have to go to right now. But what that means is that you play the prelude at whatever tempo, whatever it may be, like that. Then you slow it down a little bit. You play the fugue, and I happen to have the perfect tempi, where it's the tempi that I think Bach used in his system of tempo. I'll show it to you in future videos. It's a matrix of tempi. That when the prelude is played at this tempo, tempo X, and the fugue is played at tempo Y, which is a little slower, both the prelude and fugue last the same amount of time, with only a difference of about maybe 2 seconds. I mean, we're talking like the margin of error is so slight. Maybe I think the difference, the margin of error is only less than 2 seconds. So Bach sought a 1-to-1 duration ratio between the first prelude and fugue, but the tempi are not equal. The quarter note doesn't equal the quarter note there. So you can't, there are not always tempo relationships with the B, but there are virtually always duration relationships, or what I call duration ratios in his music. So with that being said, I'm finished with today's video on how I came up with this theory and the beginnings of my Bach tempo theory. And stay tuned for more videos like this in the series, where I will go through certain aspects of Bach's tempo practices and explain my controversial theory of tempo in Bach. Thank you for joining me, and until we meet again.